Welcome to r/Maliciouscompliance, where Karen tries to save $10 and ends up paying thousands of dollars instead. Our next Reddit post is from Meowosaurus. I used to work as a babysitter for Karen and Ken. Karen and Ken were extremely wealthy and stingy. Their kid's name was Bob. Another parent, Henry, is an extremely sweet, generous single dad who lost his husband a few years ago and dotes on his kid, Steve. I've been a nanny for several years now, and for the most part, I've worked with lovely, reasonable families. I have contracts for every family, which guarantees the hours that I work, meaning if a family goes on vacation, I still get paid because I'm technically available to work, but they chose not to use my services. Another bit of my contract is called the nanny share, so if two of the families want to combine for the day, each of them pays 2/3 of my regular pay rate. I get paid a little more for watching more kids, and they save a little only paying a portion of what they would have paid. Karen and Ken's family went to Hawaii 3 weeks ago, and per my contract, I was to be paid as usual. Before they left, they asked me if I could come in and watch their kid, Bob, the Sunday after they returned so that they could recover and rest. I agreed and set my hours from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. that Sunday. They went on the trip, everything was wonderful, and they texted me when they landed saying they'd see me at 8 a.m. The next day, when I was about to head out the door at 7:30 a.m., I received a text saying that Bob was just waking up, so I should show up at 8:30 instead. After that day of nannying, Karen asked me if I would stay past my regular hours during the upcoming week so that they could have 2 date nights. I agreed, and Karen said that she would reimburse me for all the extra hours at the end of the week, since it would be easier just to make one payment. Totally fine with me. The week finished, and I ended up staying an extra 8 hours total for the 2 date nights. I asked Ken to pay me for 16 hours, but he said that he had to talk to Karen first to double check hours and he would pay me shortly. When I got home, I received a text from Karen saying, "Hi OP, thank you so much for covering for us these past few weeks. Ken and I are feeling refreshed, and the show was hilarious. Since we were in Hawaii, you were paid for an entire week while you weren't working. We don't think this is quite fair, as it's a large sum of money, so we'd like to apply some of those hours to your babysitting today and yesterday. So we'll only pay you for 8 hours instead of the 16 hours. I was furious. I screenshotted the part of my contract that plainly stated that I would be paid for any hours that their family was on vacation, and I reminded her that she was violating the contract. She reluctantly agreed, and I texted her that I'd be paid for 16 hours. Karen instantly replied and went off on me, texting, "On Sunday, we asked you to come in at 8:30, not 8. We're already being generous and paying you for the holiday that we took. We expect you to track your hours better next time. This is unacceptable. You need to be as accurate as possible with the hours that we're paying you. We'll pay you for 15.5 hours. Readers, this was a difference of $12.50. I was going to screenshot the part of my contract that said that any rescheduling needed a 24-hour notice, but instead I went nuclear. You see, their kid Bob has been tagging along with Steve and me to music class and soccer twice a week outside of Karen's regular contracted hours since January. Karen has never offered to pay for those hours, but Henry was fine with paying his full rate for those hours because Steve was having trouble making friends at school and he'd gotten close to Bob. I chose not to say anything about the slight bump in pay because I loved watching them pay together. Cue malicious compliance. As Karen stated, I needed to be as accurate as possible. I calculated all the hours that Bob had joined us since January, 6 hours a week times 18 weeks, and the total amount they owed was almost $2,000. In the group chat with Karen, Ken, and Henry, I said, Karen stated that it was of utmost importance that I track the hours as accurately as possible, so I took it upon myself to double-check everything, including the share of hours. Thank goodness I did. I didn't realize that we had forgotten to track all the hours that Bob joined us for soccer and music class. Henry, I'm so sorry. Karen actually owes you quite a bit of money. If my calculations are correct, Karen owes you X dollars and me Y dollars. Henry replied, Karen and Ken, I'm so disappointed to hear that OP hasn't been compensated properly this entire time. I don't need you to pay back me because I wanted Steve to continue his playdates, but you need to pay OP's portion immediately. I got a huge chunk of money that I wasn't expecting, and I'm now on the hunt for my next nanny family. I'll be putting in my 2 weeks notice with Karen and Ken as soon as I do. Alright, as a dad to a young girl, let me just say that picking a fight with your nanny is idiotic because 1, they watched your kid. Do you really want them angry at your family? And 2, it's hard to find good nannies, so this Karen really shot herself in the foot. Our next Reddit post is from Hanky Panky. I grew up in an okay town that has since become a bit snobbier. I was driving down my old street last year and I saw my old neighbor, Andrea, sitting on her front porch, so I stopped in to say hi. Turning into the driveway, I noticed a regulation-sized soccer goal in her next-door neighbor's small front yard, which is very out of sync with the rest of the neighborhood. It made me laugh a little. After catching up with Andrea, I learned a couple of things. She's the last of my old neighbors who still lives on the street, and the neighborhood has become very keeping up with the Joneses, with the exception of the next-door neighbor. I asked her about the soccer goal, and here's the story. That neighbor has a young daughter who loves soccer. She would spend hours in the front yard, kicking balls into the small goal anchored in the front yard with tent spikes. Apparently, another neighbor complained to the township because of the semi-permanent structure in the front yard. Andrea's neighbor got upset about this, obviously. That soccer goal was basically just a toy in the front yard. Cops came to the neighbor's house, and he got a warning. Then, the neighbor thought that it would be okay as long as they took it down when they weren't at home, but nope. Cops were called again, and they were fined while the daughter was using it. The fine said something about having a semi-permanent structure because of the tent stakes. Cue malicious compliance. They weren't allowed to have a semi-permanent structure, but they could have a permanent structure. So, they went and got a permit from the township, dug the holes, filled it with concrete, and built a regulation-sized goal and hung the permit on one of the poles. Now, that mystery neighbor has to look at that goal post every day. Our next Reddit post is from Red Western. This happened to my dad. He was one of 3 partners at his former medium-sized company. One day, he and his entire company went out to have drinks together. I don't think it was exactly a company party, but it was more than an after-work drink at the pub. Anyways, the bar was serving aperitifs, and my dad asked for his without ice because he hates ice tainting his drink. The landlord, who was behind the bar, refused and said the ice was mandatory. So he served my dad's drink with ice. So my dad accepted the drink, took the ice out, and laid the ice on the drain rack that goes under the beer drafts. The landlord ordered him to leave. My dad was half expecting it, but he asked the guy to repeat himself. The landlord once again told my dad to leave. My dad said, okay, and started to leave. Then his entire company all started to file out after him. The landlord protested, no, you don't all have to leave, only he has to leave. One of the other staffers said something along the lines of, sorry mate, he's the big boss. We all go where he goes. So they all left and went to another bar. They had made a reservation at the bar that they were leaving, but they hadn't put down any deposit for it, and they hadn't bought any drinks yet. The aperitifs had been complimentary, so the landlord didn't even get paid for those. Down in the comments, we have this story from Deleted. I used to work in industrial manufacturing in the oil industry, and our bosses' came in. That meant the company gets taken out for a big feast for about 10 people, so nothing ridiculous. Well, the bosses aren't the suit and tie kind of people. They're more like the oil-stained white shirt types of people. We went to a decent Italian place, and when he tried to place a $1,000 deposit, the restaurant immediately told him to leave because we don't want your type ruining our reputation. They said this to my boss's boss before he could even finish talking. The big boss basically laughed, showed off the big wad of cash and said, that's too bad, this could have been yours. Maybe if you don't like this type of clientele, you shouldn't have opened a restaurant in West Texas. We left, went to a steakhouse instead, and that was the first time that I've ever had surf and turf. The big boss left a massive tip for not discriminating against us. Our next Reddit post is from Kushlord. For background on this next story, this story takes place when there were still landlines. I work at Domino's Pizza. Like most places, we get a few prank calls per week from preteens. Usually it doesn't bother me, and I'll just go along with it because it gives me something to do when it's slow. But on this Friday night, we were busy and I wasn't having it. The phone rings. Hi, thanks for calling Domino's Pizza. How can I help you tonight? Is Mr. Wall there? No sir. There isn't a Mr. Wall who works here. What about Mrs. Wall? Nope, none of those either. Then how is your building standing up? This went on a couple of times more, with classics such as, "Can I place an order to your sister's house?" and "Is your refrigerator running? Then you better go get it." Finally, I had enough. I let the kids know that I was done playing games. I say, "All right, look, it says here that your dad's name is such and such." As a side note, we keep names and addresses of past customers and their orders in the computer for future orders, just to speed up the process. "If you don't stop this, I'll call up your dad and let him know what's going on." Usually, this would be enough to stop the kids. I knew it did back in my earlier days of being a dumb kid. But some people just can't be bothered and have to push the envelope a bit too far. "I know you won't. Go ahead and call him." Oh boy, he didn't have to ask me twice. I hang up the phone and get back to work for a little bit, knowing that this kid will be camped next to the phone to answer it for the next 15 minutes or so. So I just get back to work, free of prank calls from the kid. I should have just left it there since I solved the problem. But hey, the customer's always right, and at Domino's Pizza, we always give the customer what they want. After the dinner rush was done, around 45 minutes later, I fulfill the kid's request. I ring the number. "Hello, this is OP from Domino's Pizza. How are you doing tonight?" The dad answers. Not too bad. What's the reason for the call?" "Unfortunately, we've been getting a number of calls from this phone number. We're really busy, and it's pushing customers away because of the wait times. Can you please have a talk with who I assume is your son and ask him to knock off the prank calls?" "Oh, goodness, I'm so sorry. I'll have a chat with him and his buddies." "Thank you so much, and thanks for choosing Domino's Pizza." At this point, I think the story is done. The kid will get a talking to, he won't do it again, and that'll be the end of it. But boy was I mistaken. Around 30 minutes later, a man and a chubby kid around 12 years old comes into the store. I don't think much of it, thinking they're just getting a few slices for a snack. Then they come up to the counter and ask for my name. I say, "Yeah, I'm OP." The dad says, "I think my son has something to say to you." The kid is visibly nervous. He keeps looking around the store and won't look me in the eye. "I'm very sorry for calling you. I know you're busy and it won't happen again." Then, to further the awkward suffering of the kid, who I kind of feel bad for at this point, the dad places an order for carryout and sits in our small eatery section where the kid has to try to avoid eye contact with me for the next 20 minutes. They left me a good tip, too. At Domino's Pizza, the customer always gets what they want. Our next Reddit post is from Deleted. In my husband's previous job, he worked 8 to 4 in an office. Many of his colleagues worked 9 to 5, so they were still working when he was leaving. Whenever he was about to leave, he would usually be asked a technical question or asked to quickly glance over something by another member of the staff. This was rarely quick and usually had him standing around for a further 10 minutes, which on a regular basis starts to add up. One day, his manager was going over the monthly timesheets and asked my husband why he added 10 minutes on 5 days across the past month. Bear in mind, flexible time was allowed. My husband explained the situation, referring to the specific problems that he was asked to deal with on each of those 5 days. The manager told him that the company only works in 15-minute segments, so he can't put down 10 minutes, it would have to be 15 minutes. "However, we can't round up because that's dishonest. So just bear that in mind for next time." The manager told this to my husband in front of the rest of the office. That very same week, my husband signs out of his computer at 4 p.m. Just before he leaves, the manager asked him to explain some of the particulars in an email that he received from a contractor. My husband asks, "How long is this going to take?" And the manager replies, "Just 5 minutes." My husband then says, "Unless it's a 15-minute problem, I'll have to take a look at it tomorrow." "Is it a 15-minute problem?" His manager turns red and awkwardly says that it's not. My husband respectfully states that he'll put it at the top of his to-do list the following morning and leaves. One of his colleagues texted him just after 5 and said that there was an awkward silence after he'd left, and when the manager eventually got up and left to go do something, everyone burst out laughing. Yeah, that's great malicious compliance and all, but if the manager was getting away with rounding down, then that's wage theft, which is even worse than being dishonest, because it's theft. Our next Reddit post is from Willowfeather. In the late 70s, I went to Girl Scout camp. It was great, but one night they served boiled spinach, and as fate would have it, I'd been playing with pond moss that very afternoon. To add to this, I had tried boiled spinach once at a friend's house, and I threw up. So at dinner that night, I saw that our vegetable was boiled spinach. I told the counselor, "I can't eat this. I'll throw up." The counselor said, "If you don't take at least 3 bites, you can't have dessert." "What's dessert?" I queried. "Ice cream sandwiches," answered the counselors. Damn. Game on. Okay, well, I do want ice cream sandwiches, so I'll just go ahead and take a bite and I'll puke. Should I aim for over the railing? By this point, the counselors had stopped caring. Sounds good. I took the bite, swallowed it, and then promptly puked over the railing. Suddenly, the counselors are all action, and they rushed me to the one-stall bathroom, which was currently occupied. I puked in the sink until that vile green garbage was out of my system. As I wiped my mouth with the paper towel, I said, "So, do I really need to take the other 2 bites?" Several counselors asked me shortly thereafter, "If you knew you were going to throw up, why'd you eat it?" "Because I love ice cream sandwiches," I answered. My sweet mother raised hell upon my return from camp that summer, and the forced 3-bite rule went away at Camp Winaka for many, many years. That was r/Maliciouscompliance, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.